Now, the respiratory system. We know very little about the respiratory system by comparison of most other systems. And so as we continue to understand more and more about it, again, it's one of those things that's the last to develop, so it's very difficult to, in various organisms, to do a lot of research on them because we've got to let them grow to that point and then do a number of experiments to be able to determine what are some of the inductive signals and things of that sort. But here's the fundamentals of how the respiratory system starts to form. The endoderm will form as one large kind of primitive gut or tube, and then from this region next to the pharynx, there is some mesenchyme cells that are surrounding the endoderm. Most of these mesenchyme cells will actually block Wnt signaling, and that's where you get the development of the esophagus. But there are some mesenchyme cells in the ventral region of the developing. So if this is dorsal right here and this is ventral, there are some mesenchyme cells that will block or are not block Wnt signaling. And so as Wnt signaling is expressed in these cells, it causes the formation of a second tube. And this is the formation of your respiratory system. So as the trachea develops, it will start budding off into the lung buds. These will branch even further down to become smaller and smaller branches until you have the tiniest of cells called the alveoli. And these are where the air and the blood vessels essentially meet to be able to oxygenate your blood. So there are inductive signals by a lot of the mesenchyme around it that they're starting to find out now as far as how the lung buds are being able to branch off. You do have a lot of cartilage around the trachea at first, but that cartilage becomes less and less as it starts forming around the bronchi and the bronchioles. Eventually, it goes away, and you pretty much just have all of these branches of all of these alveoli. It has to branch so much that you end up having about a surface area about the size of half of a tennis court in your lungs. That's how much this has to branch to be able to form all these tiny little surface area that the air is going to be redirected into. There is some smooth muscle that will develop around these areas to be able to control what we call bronchodilation and bronchoconstriction. This is your body's way of adjusting airflow so that areas of your lungs that may not be getting enough air, it's going to open them up a little more to allow more air in. Other areas, it might constrict it to redirect airflow, however the case may be. But so you don't really have a lot of changes in the trachea and the bronchi because of how much cartilage there is. When you start getting down to the bronchioles and such, that's when the cartilage gets lost and you get mostly smooth muscle that will be involved. And that's where asthma comes into play too, is when you get too much bronchoconstriction around that, you get a closure of the airways, and it makes it very difficult to be able to get air in and out of your lungs. A lot of the medicines that we have today are, to be able to relax those and cause bronchodilation or prevent bronchoconstriction in that regard. So one of the things about the respiratory system is beyond the Wnt signaling that causes the branching, one of the things they're showing is they believe that a chemical called a surfactant A gets secreted once the lungs are fully developed, gets secreted by the fetus, and it induces an immune response. It essentially stimulates macrophages, turns on various interleukins that will then cause the uterus to undergo contractions and essentially start labor. So this is one of the, because really it's the timer on the oven. Ding, you're done. Once the respiratory system is done, the baby is able to start breathing on its own. It's fully developed. It's the last system to develop in an organism. The surfactant also plays a key role because the lungs have to be ready to accept the air when the infant starts breathing. So one of the things that the surfactant does is it actually makes it so that the alveoli don't collapse and stick to one another. They're just tiny little spheres of cells that, because of how small they are, it's very easy for them to collapse. But because of the surfactant, it makes it so that they are able to keep their shape despite their size and be able to be ready for air once it starts coming into the respiratory system. Okay. So that's it for the respiratory system. Not too much to this. We're still discovering more and more as we go along. We are looking at some of the inductive signals, but Wnt is one of those that plays the primary role in causing this to branch off. And again, that's where the trachea and the esophagus meet at the pharynx. That's where they branch off from in that region.